paper presented at the 8th International Conference on Interdisciplinary Social Sciences is titled "The Study of Journalism in the Age of the Information Technologies: Perceptions, Thoughts and Arguments of Journalists." The main motivation in this research lies in studying the field of journalism in its current state and the changes seen in recent decades. I've studied the field through the opinions and arguments given by mass media professionals about journalism. The choice of professionals was made within this context, and the study of on the social and communicative structure includes data on this autonomous region, on Spain and on Europe, so as to compare their evolution over recent years. I have chosen the Valencian country as the spatial and temporal context to study the journalistic agents. The identity conflicts that have brought about a peculiar situation within the communication system, mainly due to heavy dependence on the political system. Scholars have also observed similar features in the professional culture and practices within the Spanish journalistic field, which belongs to the Mediterranean model. This model is oriented towards entertainment, political influence, and control by governments. The main research question is: what are the journalists' arguments as regards the influence of what remains, what is being and has been destroyed, and what is new in the journalistic field? The first question is: what do we know about the journalistic field and that of the information professionals in the Valencia region? It is linked to the objective to gather academic contributions and institutional reports. The second question is: what are their conditions for taking action? And it is associated with the objective to describe the journalistic field. With respect to the third research question, what is the modus operandi and modus operatum like? The objective related is to identify the schemes of perception and appreciation. Finally, the last research question about the crisis or a decline in the field associates the objective to reconstruct arguments as regards quality in journalism. Now I will summarize the theory and the methodology framework. I have used as a theory framework the social practice theory developed by Pierre Bourdieu. Bourdieu's methodology of sociological analysis proposes a constructivist and structuralist approach that involves the construction of the objective structures and the positions, as well as the experience of the agents themselves, the position taking or dispositions, perceptions and appraisals, called in the theory of social practice habitus. The analysis of the field must take into account the position of the field to be analyzed in relation to the field of power, establishing the objective structure of the relationships among the positions of the agents and institutions in the field. The hermeneutic circle proposed by Bourdieu interprets the cognitive construction in relation to the social structure. I have applied in this research in order to establish the relationship between the habitus and the field. To go in depth in the cognitive construction, I have used the theory of argumentation to reinforce what journalists say on quality of journalism and what their practical reasoning is like. The social agents analysis accounts for the systems of dispositions they have acquired by absorbing social and economic conditions. and which they found the opportunity to be updated on a course that is defined within the field. With respect to the methodology, I have applied the Pragma-Dialectical Approach as a tool to analyze the journalist's arguments. I will explain the reason. The Pragma-Dialectical Approach to argumentation theory, developed by Frans H. van Eemeren and Rob Grootendorst from the University of Amsterdam, analyzes the structure of the arguments in ordinary language and the discourse with strategies that allow the arguments to be interpreted and reconstructed, taking into account the physical, situational, and institutional context, so as to decide what the most plausible interpretation is, according to the charity interpretation rules, and the strategy of maximally argumentative interpretation. I'm interested in the argumentation practice in the interviews as regards introspection about journalistic practice, in order to compare this with external references and what it should be like, the practice and thoughts about values. Specifically, I analyze the concept of quality in journalism as an indicator of the current state of journalism. The construction of the analytical model. To better understand the relations between the theoretical and methodological framework, I have synthesized both in the following summary. As I pointed out before, through the main research question, I have used two perspectives to better understand this social world, diachronic and synchronic. From the first one, I have analyzed the implication over the communicative structure of the historical and political facts, and the sociological, economic, and technological perspectives. The synchronic analysis includes the communicative structure, the quality content analysis, and the reconstruction of arguments. The strategic choice of the 18 journalists' interview gives a representative and sufficient sample that reflects the diversity of discourses, representing the most relevant mass information media in the Valencia region, in the different provinces. In addition, in order for the sample to be as balanced as possible, selection criteria of gender and age have been used. The results of the analysis of the qualitative content on professional culture, journalists highlight the dependence on news agencies and institutional agendas as the main information sources and the difficulties in verifying the digital media when they want to provide immediate information. There is also no investigative journalism. When it comes to current journalism, it is particularly noteworthy that there is a concentration of media in Spanish business groups, although these media groups' owners often do not belong to the sector. As regards the influence on public opinion, the most widespread opinion is the change of news priorities selected by economic criteria and audience impact. Journalists' discredit as shapers of public opinion is increasing. The public broadcasting companies are criticized for government control and the loss of employees' autonomy. With respect to Valencian journalism and journalists, Valencian journalism is considered to be subservient to the market and politics. It is noteworthy that journalists' criticism is directed at government control and manipulation of public service broadcasting. This public service does not carry out the functions of transparency, stringency, and quality, nor protection of local culture and language. I highlight the low trade union presence for fear of the consequences of complaints and the idealization of the freelance journalist. In relation to ideology, the ideal social function of journalism has traditionally been to exercise it against power. Currently, journalism is a confluence of political, economic, and business interests. And furthermore, it does not act as a shaper of public opinion, thereby losing the social agenda. It is thus possible to state that the journalistic field, as dominated by politics and market, is in a disadvantaged position overall as regards the role of journalists within the network of interests. Finally, I highlight respect to the journalist's profile that the main motivation for working as a journalist is the appeal of the journalistic profession and culture, then the interest for writing, followed by the influence of the family environment. Results of the analysis of the argumentation structure. From the implicit standpoint, the quality in journalism has decreased over recent decades. I have reconstructed the arguments that give it support, following the Pragma-Dialectical technique. The interpretation of the reconstruction offers the following result. There are two main causes. One is external, from the social context, which is the economic crisis, and the other one is internal, within the field, or structural, the ICT adaptation. Both of them are connected because the adaptation to ICT needs economic resources that are not available because of the recession. However, both circumstances are occurring at the same time, and it is possible to say that the quick changes of technology not only needs an effort to be made to adapt the ways of production, but the adaptation is forced by the time of crisis. The conclusions based on the results from the argumentation structure analysis. The causes of the decreasing quality are related to both internal and external structural conditions. The economic crisis has revealed the subservience to the economic field. This situation is similar in other professions and does not explain the changing trends in journalism. For instance, inaccuracy of content, banality, dependence on social networks, and absence of investigative journalism. All of them justify the first conclusion, that is the problem of the decrease of quality in journalism. Secondly, the subservience to the political field is strong enough in the case of the Valencian country, to take into account the socio-historical perspective seen in the remaining habits and structures that appeared in the early decades of the recent democracy. Thirdly, the internal structural condition mentioned above, the adaptation to ICTs, also has another historical explanation. The Valencian media is seen throughout the analysis to be slow-moving as regards the new paradigm of communication. Fourth, media companies' owners want to produce low-cost news with a low cost of hiring. Journalists' common argument is the incompatibility of production quality content with a lack of experience. Fifth, both causes of the low quality content are related to the loss of values, such as the watchdog role as the consequence of the absence of investigative journalism. It seems obvious, listening to the journalists, that the economic crisis has forced them to work in conditions not appropriate to the pursuit of accuracy and strict journalism. Nevertheless, the loss of values also indicates another conditioning factor, the determining of the internal structural conditions. The sixth conclusion is on reflection on the conditioning factors leads to the question about the decline of the professionals and the field. The link between autonomy and the decline is a debate among scholars such as Saxon, who agree that autonomy in the field is impossible.